Attorney General, ministers, members of the Parliament, distinguished legal practitioners, judges, lawyers, members of the diplomatic corps, ladies and gentlemen. A warm Balavanaka and Namaste and good afternoon. And I want to especially thank the Honorable Attorney General and the Solicitor General for having me here this afternoon to address you. This afternoon I'm going to be talking about the rights of squatters, their housing, and of course the planning that goes behind modern cities and towns, and for the cities of tomorrow. The United Nations estimates more than 6 billion people will live in cities by the year 2045, compared to a little less than 4 billion today. And ladies and gentlemen, hidden beneath all these large figures are subtle little complexities that are quite unique to each city, town, and urban center. First of all, one thing that we should realize is that every city or an urban center grows at a rate that is unique unto itself. And it takes its own unique direction. Each growth can be seen as an open, complex system. And of course, these growths do also generate cultural, economic and technological innovation by combining new materials with unique heritage and historical factors. One of the biggest mistakes in development is that we tend to have a global strategy but do not plan uniquely for a town or a city. And not recognizing that each town or city has its own distinctive area of growth. I mean, I can share a small anecdote. There were two cars parked at a signal. One was a Mercedes limousine and the other was a BMW limousine. There was the red light, and so both the cars had to park beside each other. The driver from the BMW put down his shutter and asked the other guy at Mercedes, he said, "Does your car have a bar?" To which the guy in Mercedes, he took offense and he says, "Of course it does have a bar. Mine is a limousine too." The next question he asked was, "Well, does your car have a television?" To which the Mercedes guy turned around and said, "Of course it does." And this time he got even more offended and angry. And just as the signals turned green, the driver of the BMW, again for the one last time, asked the driver, "Does your car have a bed?" For which the guy in the Mercedes didn't have an answer. But the guy in the Mercedes did one thing. He went around the town throughout the day, looked for the best mattress with the best satin, duvet covers and all of that, and fitted into his limousine. And the next thing he did was to go looking for the guy in BMW everywhere, throughout. And towards dusk, he did spot this BMW parked under a tree. All the glass, the windows all fogged up. So then what he did was, he went in, parked the car next to the BMW, and then went and knocked the window. There was no response. He kept knocking. After a few moments, the window came down, and out popped the head of the guy from the BMW. And he says, "Why are you disturbing me? I'm sitting in my spa bath." You see, growth, direction is unique unto itself. And so if Suva or Nandi were to be compared to Yokohama, let's say, which is supposed to be a smart city, an exemplary smart city in the world today, the growth patterns are different. Many times I was sitting there listening to David, and I said, "Oh my God, such a beautiful city, Vancouver." And I've been to Vancouver recently. There's so much we can emulate, and we call it emulation. We don't call it copying. Because each city has its own takes its own distinctive growth pattern. Then this would then mean that there's no single roadmap for the future that's common to all cities and urban centers. While we cope up with our own unique scarce resources, global warming, inequality, epidemics, and natural disasters, an urban center has to grow, for which then we say a global strategy, but a localized planning. So if you emulate another city center or an urban center, we look at the strategy, but we plan unto ourselves, bearing in mind our distinctive growth patterns. Going further, then there are two factors that we consider. One is the lock-in factor of each city in its growth pattern. Like for instance, the city of Bangalore was never designed by the British to take on 500,000 new vehicles every year. At the moment, they say Bangalore has 5.6 million cars. And people who got to go to work start as early as 4:35 in the morning. And the same goes with other cities where luxurious condominiums and shopping malls and centers have come, which has put added pressure in terms of planning in putting up car parks and putting up entertainment, recreation centers, restaurants and footpaths. So the lock-in factor is very important when a development pathway is planned. And the second factor, similarly, is the path dependencies factors, which we consider in terms of our city developments as well. And path developments, the dependencies occur where the history of the urban form inhibits some kinds of change and promotes others. So one is inhibited while the other is provided, like for instance the city of Rio, where development happens at a much more faster pace in one area, while the informal settlements at the other areas have been seemingly left behind. So, ladies and gentlemen, local city councils then will start by planning towards smart city technologies, like for instance how Beverly Hills, the city of Beverly Hills have gone, including their connectivity and their fiber optic network supplied to homes, businesses and other dwellings, which also help infrastructure traffic flow as an example. If a city is located, like for instance, playing up to its own strengths, if a city is then located, for instance, as a competitive advantage geographically by the ocean or the river, or a river, then there are things like autonomous shipping strategies that redevelop a city or a town. They are employed as well. Smart city, ladies and gentlemen, has become the vision and dream for many cities and towns around the world. And it goes back to the BMW Mercedes story that I just shared a few minutes back. Smart cities become a dream for many cities, and for some, it has become a buzzword. But realistically, when you see on billboards and posters around the world, advertisers portraying their visions of smart cities with exciting and innovative technologies, enabling even higher levels of productivity and new ways of life for urban residents, economies driven by data and interconnectivity promise to revolutionize the means of production and to banish the chaos and of course the filth of earlier ages. From North America to Europe to the Asia Pacific, officials like me and bureaucrats like me extol the virtues of smart cities wherever we go as a means of radically reshaping urban life. But these ideas are echoed by urban planners too. And I have an architect and urban planner to follow suit after this. The ideas are echoed by urban planners and the visions for world-class cities that take away the messy, unplanned urban centers that exist in many parts of the world today. But ladies and gentlemen, one thing that's very important and sometimes conspicuously missing is that these visions, if you look into them, sometimes you find that there's an absence of the informal settlers being put into these visions. The rights, the human rights of informal settlers being added The rights of the informal settlement neighborhoods, and in some cases not concealed totally. Their existence are concealed and factually inaccurate sometimes, as about 1/4 of the world's urban population, is nearly 900 million, live in informal settlements around the world today. This all too common utopian view perpetuates harmful assumptions of who does and doesn't belong in the cities of future, and provides unofficial justification for evicting poorer residents or relocating them far away from employment opportunities. Luckily, Fiji does not belong to that category or doesn't belong to that league. And in a moment, I'll come and tell you how we are progressing in Fiji in terms of our vision for our towns and cities. We should never miss an opportunity, and we in Fiji are all too aware of it and conscious of this, that we do not miss any opportunity to draw on the knowledge and the financial capacity that makes the cities genuinely smart. And this includes informal settlements as well. An alternative vision, that would draw on these skills to enhance smart cities in ways that would make them more sustainable, resilient, productive for everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, when we involve urban settlers or urban settlement residents into the planning of a smart city or a city of the future, there are 2 or 3 important points that go towards supporting it. The urban sprawl is normally recognized as contributing to higher levels of energy use, particularly for transportation, while the density of many informal settlements is often a barrier to so-called adequate standards of living. New efforts by community architects around the world, including major cities like Bangkok, are developing ways to maintain high levels of density and connectivity while simultaneously improving basic services, including piping water into homes, providing good quality sanitation, drainage, and regular collection of household waste. Let me tell you very proudly that the government of Fiji has embarked into nearly 40 settlements that we're taking care of around Fiji, doing exactly what I've said. Not just putting pipes of waters or putting water pipes or upgrading infrastructure, but also involving the residents of these settlements into the process, and we call it participatory upgrading. I worked with the current minister with whom I was talking a couple of days ago, and she laid out her criteria in the engagement of informal settlers in just a simple sentence. She says, the first that should go into the criteria is how much of an engagement do the residents of that particular settlement show. That should also fit into the criteria, but that should be one of your prime points to consider while engaging with them. Because if you have a participatory upgrading, not only does that put in so many benefits like getting things done quicker, faster, cost saving, etc., but it also gets the ownership and the buy-in of the residents right from day one, but also goes back to what I said just a moment ago. When you have participation from the residents, you also get the brains. You get to pick the brains into the development process itself. Many informal economic activities that take place in informal settlements are important links to supply chains, which is a huge benefit when you plan for a smart city or a city of the future. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, it is important not to idealize the conditions in informal settlements, many of which desperately need to be upgraded to achieve even the most basic standards of living considered appropriate for the 21st century. Yet, excluding them from plans for the next generation of urban development means ignoring the rights of key segment of people to live in cities which they belong, and we should never deny the key expertise they will make cities truly smart through their brains. Again, there is no universal one-stop quick-fix solution that can solve all the problems of this squatting in all parts of our world. Considering the inevitability of squatting, the need is primarily for a change in attitudes towards squatting, squatters and squatter settlements. This includes taking an enabling approach, which instead of taking a confrontationalist attitude. Our government, like many other governments, have strived to create an enabling environment under which people using and generating their own resources could find unique local solutions for their own housing and shelter needs. We take a very participatory approach, like I said, and also involve them on a day-to-day basis in how we progress this. And for that, one of those things that I can also proudly share, having worked within the Fijian bureaucracy, is there's been the political willingness to be able to recognize and act upon the issues that we have faced. Even in small, simpler ways in how policies have been changed or policies have been put in place. I worked with the former Minister of Housing, and one of those things he used to always mention, and he made that a point in the policy, it was that when you're upgrading an informal settlement, houses, as you probably would know, are haphazard in a community. And then you need to upgrade the roads. And when you start upgrading the road, you lay the roads as you go through it. And one of those things he used to say is if the road goes straight, and because these are informal settlements, you'd have houses sitting haphazard, and some of these houses would sit on what was going to be the road, a potential road. One of those things he always said, and he always still today holds, is that we never remove a house. Or in other words, he says, minimize the removal of houses to lay your roads. And he used to ask these questions to some of the bureaucrats who used to stand there. If someone were to come to your house and remove your house overnight because they want to lay a road, what would your response be? So participating and the political willingness towards small, minor things into upgrading has made a difference, and is starting to make a difference, in so many ways in Fiji as well. Fiji's proactiveness starts, like I said, with a political willingness and recognizing and acting upon it. And with the budgets that we have set aside this fiscal year in the last year, we are now beginning to turn around and recognize, not just recognize the rights of our squatter settlement people, but also act upon it. The Ministry of Local Government, Housing and Community Development, along with the UN Habitat, have partnered on two major global programs. One is the Participatory Informal Settlements Upgrading Program and the Cities and Climate Change Initiative. And this is apart from the town-wide, city-wide upgrades that we do in informal settlements. Following the cyclone T.C. Winston, UN Habitat and the ministries and the climate change unit of the Ministry of Economy jointly developed a proposal which was successfully accepted with the aim to build the resilience of some of the most vulnerable informal settlements within Fiji. And the participatory principle is literally taken for its meaning in this project. This is called the Adaptation Fund, a mechanism under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and it agrees to fund this initiative at the cost of 8.4 million Fijian dollars. At the core of this project, there are 16 informal settlements selected across Nandi, Lami, Lautoka, and Singatoka. Ladies and gentlemen, over the next 4 years, the communities will be supported to prioritize their resilience projects, such as drainage, access to roads, bridges, and flood protection. The most vulnerable community members, for example, children, the elderly people, and people with disabilities, in many cases women, are also specifically supported through this project. And the processes will aim to bettering their lives in so many ways. The project not only aims to support the most vulnerable, but also helps them through infrastructure projects and integrate them into informal settlements, upgrading work of the governments by regularizing their tenure systems as well. I could go on and on with so many things that the government is also doing and effective steps in terms of smart cities, coordination, information sharing. Our city councils, we've gone through a pre-feasibility study with the assistance from ADB in digitalizing and having the ease of doing business, and also making it compatible to the digital transformation program that the public service is going through in collaboration with the Singapore SCE, the Singapore Collaboration Enterprise. And also, the government has set aside special budgets specifically to collect and manage waste smartly. This year, we would be looking at rolling out uniform, consistent smart bins across the country. We're doing a trial initially. There's budget set up for that. And also, we're looking at making larger strides in terms of partnerships through SCE in establishing strategic master plans for two major cities, Notoka and Suva, and of which details are being worked on. So these are some of the areas that Fiji is taking strides, and of course emulating through the partnerships of various international cities, making the places where we live, the spaces where we live, smarter, more accessible to information, and of course progressing. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for listening to me and for the opportunity to be here.